Welcome to the Family Journey Show, brought to you by Finally Home. Each month, we'll be live with conversations between our Finally Home team and leading experts. Our mission is to provide you with the insights, strategies, and encouragement you need to navigate the unique challenges and joys of your family journey. Whether you're a foster parent, an adoptive caregiver, or a kinship guardian, this show is designed with you in mind. We'll be diving deep into topics that matter most to you, from managing big emotions and building strong family bonds to accessing mental health resources and advocating for your children's needs. So, grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's embark on this journey together. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Welcome to the Family Journey Show, where support, community, and resilience grow strong roots.
Welcome to Finally Home's Family Journey Show, where we get to talk about things that are important to families like ours, foster, adoptive, and kinship families. I'm Kristen Orphan, co-founder of Finally Home, and I'm excited about today's conversation. And we're going to get real and maybe even get a little bit into people's kitchen, so to speak, about talking about one of the big questions for particularly foster families. And that is, first of all, a guideline to healthy families, and subtitle, is it okay to say no? Our desire and our responsibility as parents is to build a healthy home where everyone is given an opportunity to heal and thrive. And I just want to say one thing. When I say everyone, I actually am including the parents and caregivers, which we would probably all say, oh, yeah, but do we really live that out? And so that's a core value of Finally Home. So we're considering that value in light of the decision that all families like ours are often faced with as to whether or not to open our homes to more kids. It really is relevant to all families, foster, adoptive, and kinship families. But of course, there's an ongoing question and opportunity specifically for foster parents. So whether temporarily or permanently, if you receive that call, is it okay to say no? Our special guest today is uniquely equipped for this conversation and has great personal experience. And I believe that God has given him a lot of insight and discernment as well. So I want to say welcome, Chaplain Ted Stackpole. So Ted, let's start by having you just share a little bit about your family story.
Yeah, so just a little bit of our foster adoption journey, and that'll tie into it, is from 2013 to 2019, we had a couple dozen children come through our home. 6 of those children.
So a couple dozen children. Just want to make sure everybody kind of caught that. So go for it.
Okay. 6 of those children, their parents' rights were either terminated or surrendered. So we were able to give them the gift of a forever family through adoption. And so that's 6 there. Now, ironically, I'll just let you know that when Angie and I first got married, I wanted 1 child because 1 sounds really easy, and she wanted 4 kids. And so, like every young couple does, we compromised and we had 5. So you can start doing the math now. We had 5 biological children before we started our foster adoption journey. So we have 11 children now. We still have 8 at home between the age of 7 and 17 years of age. And it's been an amazing journey up to this point. So a lot of factors that got us into this realm here, but we are now one of those weird looking families when you see them on the internet. So.
Wow. You had a lot going on, and you and I talked a little bit about this. This was also kind of during the COVID era, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, this was, we started in 2013. So our last adoption was in 2019.
Okay. And you were getting calls. I just want to go back to the beginning, first of all, in terms of what got you started in foster care.
Yeah. So I was pastoring a church full time, my wife and I, and she was the principal of our Christian school at the church. We had some families that had been involved in international adoptions, and they came to me and said, listen, we would like to see if you're interested in, what it would look like to bring an adoption ministry into our church. They gave me some books to read. And so we just kind of started off small, and we started a small group. And those people met together, and some families that were interested in adopting came into the church. And so it kind of was just being supportive of people that were interested in adoption. But as we know, there was a paradigm shift that was taking place across the world, and there was a lot of things that were going sideways with international adoptions. Foster care became more on the scene. And then in our county, we live in a rural county, they offered a foster parent pre-service training, first time ever in our county. And we had several families, 4 families to be exact, that were interested in taking the class. And so my wife and I, we made a decision, hey, let's be good pastors. We'll take the class with them, see what they're getting into. And that's what we did. That was kind of our launch point there. And so it wasn't a heavy buy-in. It was more, we just wanted to support other families that had interest in this. And that's kind of where things opened up, and we all of a sudden began to step into a whole new territory in our life about 9 months later. And I'm saying 9 months because that's when Pandora's box opened up, and we started getting call after call. And we were only licensed for 1 child, but they kept calling us regardless of how many we were licensed for. They kept asking us if we could open up a little more space in our home for just a couple more kids, and the calls kept coming. And we only had one answer at that time in our life. You can figure that one out.
Yeah, there were a lot of yeses going on, I believe. I'm just really interested and also inspired by your story, Ted, when you said just about as pastors and shepherds in your church, when families came to you, you had a couple responses, and that one was openness, but also one was just to walk a mile in their shoes and just see what this was all about. Then, of course, in your particular family, that meant that God also got a hold of your hearts and Angie's heart, and you got licensed, which led. It's kind of that thing. One thing leads to the next on that path, and then, as you say, very quickly, a couple dozen kids come through your home, and that's a lot. You had a lot going on, and one of the things that I know, you're very honest about the pressures, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but some of the chaos possibly, and you can correct me on that, but that was a lot. There was a lot going on with all of those yeses, and we like to start with some of the positives. I know there were a lot of positives going on because you've said that you had a lot of resources and support. So I want to start there just to say, what were some of those key resources and supports that you had in place that, in your words, allowed you to do this very big thing and also say yes?
Yeah, so I want to share those resources with you and tell you that we became aware within the first 2 years of statistics of foster families making it. That created for us a grave concern, not just for us, but all of the families that had gone through the pre-service training were becoming large families quickly. So it wasn't just our family. Mm-hmm. So I was looking at this and saying, what's going to happen? If we look at the statistics of children placements being moved, placement disruption, as well as families closing down, quitting or giving up. Like, what is the solution to this? Like, what's I don't know enough about this. And that's when we began to really make a discovery about some people call it wraparound care, or support care for families. And we quickly in the church, I say quickly, within probably about it is quick for a church, but about 6 months, we developed a full support system for any family that decided to foster in our church. And so we assigned to them someone to advocate for their family. And then that advocate had a group of volunteers that was on board with them. And it was very much a way of, things happen organically in churches. People have a baby, people are there, they bring meals to them organically. But the big issue many times we face is that in order for something to be sustainable, like long term, there's got to be a system in place. And so that's what we developed right up front, was a system that was in place, asked for people to make commitments to these families for a year, and then began to create things that were very predictable for those families so they could have respite care, have meals provided for them, help with transportation, relational. And so basically it was like 3 things. Every month, this is what was taking place for our family. Something inspirational would happen for them, something relational would happen for them, and something tangible would happen for them from the teams that were, I don't want to say assigned, but the teams that had volunteered to serve those families. That was the game changer for us. And I have a lot of stories where we were in crisis mode and these volunteers came through right on time to keep us moving forward in all three of those areas, actually.
Wow. Again, I'm just so amazed because God has equipped you as such an analytical person and a student. And I love the approach that you had to go and figure out how do we prevent some things that we see happen a lot, as you said, disruptions and falling apart. And what we've even seen are divorces, real significant mental health struggles and such. And I love that you went in with a preventative mindset and also created a system that not only served your family, but the other families in your church, and also engaged other people in your church with the gift of being a part of a ministry. You know, we, in this orphan care world, we talk a lot about James 1:27. And sometimes I think the narrowest focus is that people think, well, oh my, that means I have to be an adoptive parent or a foster parent or whatever. And sometimes God does call us to it. Of course, we're sitting here, you and I, representing families where that was 100% the case. It's just that I joke and say, I don't want all of my friends to be foster adoptive parents because I need their help. So one of the takeaways that I want to point out too is the amazing opportunity that the body of Christ has and the different models there are out there that show. I love that. Would you say inspirational, tangible? What was relational?
Relational, yeah. Just three things. Do something inspirational for that family this month. Pray for them. Call them. Something relational. You're going to spend time with them. Maybe do respite care, and then something practical. Maybe you're going to cook a meal for them. But just three things. You do that for these families, they'll stay connected. I'll just share with you an amazing stat out of that. So just a snapshot, in 3 years, we ended up having 5 families foster 50 children and 18 adoptions take place. And to this day, we've never had a family, out of those 5 families, none of them have, they all continue to foster today. So, and that's just because they're veterans at this point, right? But in early days, when someone's first starting to foster, especially that first year, I say they're a veteran after a year. But after that, if they can get through that first year, they need to know that people are with them, that there is a support system, a support group, a support team that is on mission with them, that they're not doing this by themselves.
Yeah, you're not alone is huge. And it's the frontline people who need all of the backline supports. And what an incredible story and model, and something you lived out that you said to me in another conversation. It was a game changer. It allowed you to do what you did as a family. So one question I would ask, because here's the thing is, it's still with all of that support, and the stat I love so much is that those families are still intact, because to me, this is, not meant to destroy people, but we do get pressed down and all of those things. So it doesn't make it easy. It's just so that, it creates the body wrapping around, which is what I believe the Lord intended when he said, just to remind us to keep our eye out for those who are suffering, the widows and the orphans, and take, aliens, and just like keep your eye out. And as a body of Christ, be a part of supporting our world in that way. And, I will say, because I know we as a family certainly learned some things that I look back and I go, oh my, thank you for God's grace. That what in the world, but when you start something like that, it is it's when you first become a parent. I just had my first grandbaby, and so I'm watching my babies learn how to be parents. You've never done it before. So you do get supports, and yet there is still this learning as you go thing. So I'm just going to ask, looking back, yes, you survived. Yes, you guys were victorious in so many important and key ways. What did you learn, or what would you do differently, like for the sake of other people learning?
Yeah, so I give a lot of advice through coaching foster parents, and a lot of this are things that we did that worked well for us. And now there's things that I look back and say, man, if we were to do one thing different, this is what we would do. And I think part of that is placing a higher level on the health of our family over helping children. And the reason I say that is because our heart was really about, we can make room. And at one point we had 5 girls in one room, 2 bunk beds and a toddler bed in between that. So, we were just maxed out. Our house, they said they needed 40 square foot per child. They were going to find it in our house. And so there was this heart, like, we can help another child. We can help another sibling group. We can help another. And walking through that, making those kinds of decisions there, we were aware that it was impacting our family, and not just our bio kids, but the other foster children in the house. But we weren't elevating, like, is this a healthy home for more kids to come into? And then if we said, yes, we are healthy, we weren't making a consideration that would this now make us a not a healthy home for children to come to? Like, is this now going to be a bad placement? And I think that's important for, placement agencies. They want to find the best placement for that child. But many times they're just trying to find a bed for that child. And so, but we as foster parents, we still have the ability to control that. So even if placement thinks it's a good idea, that doesn't necessarily mean it is a good idea. And so I think elevating the health of our home is critically important over helping more children. There's always going to be more children that are going to need our help. And we're going to have opportunity to help more children because children are going to come through our home, be reunified, or move into adoption placements. And so I think pacing ourselves, it's a marathon, it's in a sprint, and understanding that, hey, we need to elevate and make sure that before making more decisions, that we understand, that this potentially could change the dynamics in a negative way in our household.
That's really good. And so one thing that you just said is that we might even be thriving, doing really well, and yet we still have to now say, we'll bring it, which is great. And sometimes when we get into these callings, and it's not just foster care and adoption, but a lot of things that, we get, you could even liken it to financial margin. It's like, you have to, when you have margin, it doesn't mean you have to fill that margin. So margin is good. And even if we are thriving, and when we are thriving, it doesn't mean, we must be ready to do more. And we are going to get very practical in terms of some just very clear considerations that we're going to give the gift of to families to think about in times before a crisis or before chaos, when you're kind of calm. It's like that premarital time where you're talking about things that you haven't faced yet. And yes, it'll be different when you actually are facing it. But if you make some of these agreements beforehand, you can at least look at each other and say, okay, well, we did agree. Our emotions are pulling us in another way, but we did agree, and we agreed, and we made this commitment to one another. And maybe we even need to have other people who hold us accountable because we're not feeling very strong right now in this boundary that we had said was important to our family. And you also said to elevate having a healthy family, which is something that at Finally Home, we say, countless amount of times is the core. And what we mean by that is really important. A healthy home is where parents are able to take leadership and responsibility for the care of everyone, and that there's space, attention, provision to see everyone as an individual, and to be able to connect them into the team. So we have to be able to be somebody, and we say, and belong, so to connect together and work together as a team. So I think also what we can help families do is to define that kind of vague word of health a little bit more specifically. And I know that in your ministry and in our ministry, we are more than happy to help people to do that. So it doesn't just become this thing that's so undefined that we don't even know what it means. It's again just about how we feel about things. So we want to help with that. So one of the things that always comes up for us that we also really value is marriage. The gift of marriage in a healthy family is that we do see things differently. And so we want to support one another and in that and bringing different perspectives. So I want to just ask from your perspective, what dynamics have you seen exist in couples who are being asked to take in more kids? What tends to happen in a mom and a dad, or just having two different individuals viewing this? What have you seen? And then share a little bit about you and Angie.
Yes. So there's no doubt. I mean, as anyone that's on this landscape knows that a husband and wife are not always solid. Like they don't start on the same step. Angie and I didn't start on the same step. I mean, our whys getting into it weren't exactly the same either. I felt like James 1:27 was just the right thing to do. So it wasn't really necessarily this spiritual call of God in my life to do this. It was like, hey, there's a child in need. We can help them. Let's do it. It just kind of was doing the right thing. Where Angie, her heart was leading her. Like this was about her bleeding for the, so we're all in different places there. And I see that across the board with families, and as I meet them, you can tell one is more involved sometimes than the other. I've seen times where one was fully involved and the spouse was not involved really at all, like almost zero. So there's a huge spectrum of where people are coming to. And that's not saying one's right or wrong. It's understanding, well, how do we work together on this so that we can be successful and the plane takes off and doesn't crash somewhere midstream of this. And so, for Angie and I, like I said, we kind of came at this from different directions, but we both knew it was this is what we should be doing right now. We need to open up our home. We need to do something here to help the kids in our community, in our county, in our own backyard that are displaced right now and need some stability in their life. And so let's step into that.
Yeah, I think it is common and it is a gift and it's something to be worked out because it also can create a lot of conflict. And one of the things I would say in a 2-parent home, you have to work it out, do whatever needs to be done to get on the same page. So like you said, you don't crash and burn. Because, go ahead.
One of the things we offer is an assessment, a marriage assessment. And so we take people through, it's like premarital counseling, but it's actually pre-foster care, pre-adoptive. And so they thought, and I'm always amazed because when they answer the questions, when we did premarital counseling, you ask questions separately to each couple, and then you compare their answers and see where they are. It's the same way with this. Like when people go through the pre-foster care assessment and they fill it out, then we meet back together with them and we look, and it's always amazing, questions like, do you think it's going to change your family dynamics? And one will say yes, the others say no. And going through and trying to figure out what are the expectations there and trying to kind of filter through. Sometimes I'm correcting both their answers, and sometimes we're just allowing this to be something that they actually see, that they're coming at this with a different thought process, and they may have some of these questions they may have never thought of before because they're just really thinking about one question: can we help a child? But really not thinking about the holistic approach, like what is this? How is this going to impact our marriage, our other children, our household, our careers, all these different things that it impacts.
Yeah. Extended family relationships.
Absolutely.
Especially when you expect that everyone has the same excitement and passion and all of those things and the disappointment that can happen. Or the boundaries that some people put up because now they're just not quite comfortable with our kids. Right. So all of those things that only somebody who has been experienced like you can bring out. And I love the concept of that assessment. So
I have a story to share with you.
Yes.
So I'll just tell you that, like I said, when the licensing agency or the placement agency would call, they always called Angie's number. And I don't know why, but she was always out of town and would call back. And so, the answer was always yes for us. So, man, I was taking in kids and she was never home. She's out of state. She's at a convention, and so I'm bringing in these kids. But we finally came to, I thought we came to a conclusion. We had this one sibling, we had several children coming from the hospital. We had this one sibling group, and I thought we'd made a decision that the next call we get was going to be no. I really thought that. Now, we had changed placement agencies and moved to a Christian agency, and somehow they picked up my phone number. So they called me this time, and Angie was out of town again. And so they called me, and they're like, hey, listen, the one of your siblings has a new sibling now, and we want to, the sibling's been with the relative, but they something happened when they broke a court order, and so now we need, and all this stuff's going on. So anyways, so they called and they said, would you guys be willing to take this this newborn? And it was really clear to me the next time they called, the answer was no. I was so excited, like we'd never said no before. And so I told them no, we wouldn't take this placement. I'm like, I can't believe it, we did it. Finally, after all this time, we finally told them no. So I called, I don't know if I called or text Angie, I might have, and I think I sent her a text message and said, hey, we did it. We finally said no. She said, we said no to what? And I said, well, placement called and I told them no about this. And can I just tell you that I was in a lot of trouble at this point now because that child was not coming to our house. Now, ironically, I'll just tell you that it was several months later and something happened again with the relative and all this. And they called us and we ended up taking the child in, and that child today is my son, Theodore. So much for my nose on that one there. But we were, it's a challenge. It's a continual challenge. And she, she's like, well, when I said no, I didn't mean no to one of their siblings. And so even trying to work through clarifying, like when you say no, what do you mean by no? Like, what if this talking through scenarios may help you thwart having to get marriage counseling shortly after decisions are made? So
yeah. What are the exceptions to the no?
That's right.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you have a very big family. You did say yes a lot, and many of the foster adoptive families who are listening can relate. So let's talk about this. What are some of the gifts of having a big family?
So one of the beautiful things that's happened, and it was confusing at first, it's very cross-generational. So I'll just tell you, this weekend, Friday, when I went to the airport, I took our 9-year-old Penelope with us, and we waited, and our oldest daughter, who's 30, she came through, off the plane and through the gates there with our two granddaughters that live in Europe. And so as they came through, Penelope runs through. Now you have to understand, our grandchildren are almost the same age as our own children, because we were adopting and fostering infants and smaller children. And so when Penelope runs there, and I got it on video, and Ruthie, our older granddaughter there, like 6 years old, runs through there. And so they're hugging and embracing, and and I'm like, this is just like bizarre, but it's so cross-generational for us to have small children in the house. So I'm a dad and I'm a granddad, all this going on at the same time. And so they, it might be Aunt Penelope, but really they're like cousins. Yeah. And so there's a lot of shared memories that take place, like when they can come visit. There's an excitement when our older children, we just had a new grandbaby that that's born, that's coming this week also, and that grandchild's never met the other grandchildren. But everyone gets to be a part of this. So all the children in the house are going to be a part of this, meeting for the first time, or watching this take place. So I think there's some beautiful things taking place, as far as being cross-generational, and with a larger family, it's a lot different. And so there's a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of exciting things that take place that we would probably have never experienced, or I know we would not have experienced if we were a smaller family. And remember, I only wanted one. So,
That's right. And then you compromised and had 5. So a lot of love, a lot of joy and fun, and I'm sure just a lot of activity. And so what do you see as some of the challenges with a big family?
Well, first of all, some of the, you're going to have challenges like everyone across the board.
Mhm.
And, those challenges are clear, meaning, how do you, just the logistics itself, logistical matters, without any kind of behavioral issues or mental illness or any of those kind of things, just the logistics of, you know, getting kids to their schools in the morning, getting them to their doctor's appointments, feeding a family, of that size. There's a lot of challenge, discovering, like, we want all of our kids to be involved in extracurricular activities, but we have to limit that. Like, we might say, look, everyone gets to pick one this year, and they can't all be at the same time.
Yeah.
So, making discoveries and figuring out ways that you can manage it so they're not missing out. Maybe they can't play sports all year round, but they can do one season of one sport, and that's just the way we're going to have to manage it, because we just can't do all at the same time. So there's a lot of just logistical things that take place with a larger family, and even more complex when you're fostering, because now you're talking about visits, court dates, all of these types of things for multiple sibling groups, if you choose to do that. And I would highly recommend making considerations of only doing one sibling group at a time, but we went way beyond that. And so there's a lot of just logistics that take place. And for the average family who's got both parents working full time, and my wife was a full-time principal when we first started fostering, and I was pastoring full-time. So if you've got two full-time people working in the household, there are a lot of logistical complications. And unless you have a super support group system there that is stepping out and helping to provide childcare for you, transportation for kids to get to different places, all of that, then it's going to become a crisis for you. So those are just some of on the logistical side, some of the challenges that are there before we even get into, the dynamics of personality and behaviors and maybe even mental challenges that are there for the kids.
Well, one of the things I appreciate about you, Ted, is that you hold both of these things to be true at the same time. And one is that you have an amazing family. You and Angie said yes, and this is your family. These are your kids. You adopted, did you say you adopted 6 children? And you celebrate the support that you had that enabled you to do it. You're also willing to say there were some things that it was too much. And I think that we can hold both things to be true, that, God's grace and provision allowed, and we can't parse out all of the things about, turning right when maybe, now we would have turned left, but all of that is now as unto the Lord. And yet the wisdom that you gained in it, and we're about to get really practical for people. The one thing I think that I've heard you say is, just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. And one of the things I also want to say is that even looking at the quote unquote success of your family, and I would say more so the celebration of family and the beauty of it than us defining what success is. You wouldn't say to people that means you should, foster a couple dozen kids or do all of the things. We have to be cautious, I think, and I want to let you respond to it. I do think that people who are listening and families who are in this journey need to be cautious about looking at families like yours or other families that now we go, well, look at them. I mean, they're stable, they're loving, they love each other. Angie and Ted, they've got a good marriage, all of those things. And looking back maybe and saying that is proof of why, even when we're blown through all of our boundaries, we just have to say, yes, it's for the kids, it's for the kids, it's for the kids. So even before we get into what I think is just wonderful practical guidelines and objective things for people to consider, what would you say as one of those families that people might look at and go, well, I mean, I admire them so much. Look at what they've done, and they have changed the lives of all of these kids, and And if I say yes to being a foster parent, I mean, God's going to make me able to do that.
Yes. So first of all, Facebook lies. So you can't believe anything that's on there. So when you see the pictures and the smiles, that we put our best face forward, right? I mean, we're not going to tell all the dirty stuff going behind the scenes there.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we're not looking at and reading other people's stories and not realizing that there's a lot of heartache behind the scenes. I have a course that I do that's for marriage, and it talks about the pressures of protecting your marriage. And when I did that live course and I get prayer requests, I had people on there. I had a lady on there that said, look, my husband's left me and I have these foster kids now. And I needed this so bad. And their story did turn the corner and move a different direction. Thank God for that. But there are a lot of things behind the scenes that take place that are very difficult. I mean, my wife and my wife has her own therapist. We're about to start counseling again for her and I. And so not for our marriage problems, but just for the pressure of raising kids that come from hard places and have maybe trauma or generational trauma. Maybe that's genetically that's in them. And so there are a lot of things behind the scenes that take place there that you have to be really cautious when you look at people's stories and say, look how successful. I just want to say that there's a lot of heartache below the surface that many times we don't share, because the average person would look at us like we're crazy. Like, what do you mean you have holes in your doors, or you've got plywood on the walls in your daughter's room, or what does all that mean? Are you so those are the kind of things that are behind the scenes that take place. And so we have to be careful not to assess the beautiful photo that we had a professional take to be what's really taking place, because the dynamics behind the scenes is a lot of heartache. It's all for the right reason. It's not for us. It's not because we needed children. It's because those children needed a family, and there's a big difference there. And I think it's one of the things that we usually encourage people: make sure that you're doing this for the right reason, not because you need something, but because they need something. And when you go that direction, then it does play it out in the end to say, I'm doing this for that child, and that's why making the sacrifices. So there's not any disappointment on my side or regret. There's no regret on my side either, because I'm doing it for the right reasons. I'm doing it for somebody else and not for myself.
That's good. And I appreciate how you keep it real. Big or small, what you said at the very beginning is that the goal is to be a healthy family. Because if we are doing it for the children, to be able to create an environment that they can heal and thrive. And so another thing I've heard you say is it is really all about discerning capacity, putting kids in the right homes. Yes, placement, their responsibility is to find a safe place. And they're doing their best to do their job. And so we're going to talk for the remaining time here about what is our job? What is God calling us to do? And that even in this extreme calling, it is okay to say no and to set boundaries. So we're going to talk about some guidelines. And the very first thing, because I love, you came up with that subtitle of "It is okay to say no." So you believe that it is okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. When you get that call, can you be prepared to say no?
Yeah, are you asking me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think one of the things in pre-service we learn, and of course when you go through pre-service, you forget everything you learned anyways, right? You're like, when they make the first call, you're like, I don't remember anything. What am I supposed to do? But you should have some things written down so you don't forget. But just some questions that you write down that are going to be basic. We've learned, some of this we've already learned, because we have sat down with our licensing agency and said, hey, we want to take children between these ages, this gender maybe. We don't want them on psychotropic medicines, or it's okay, or, so we have things. But when they call you, I don't know that they actually ever read that list. They're just calling you because they need a bed. So you need to kind of remember some of those things and ask questions like, where a visit's going to take place, where do they go to school? Because all of these things are going to lean into your capacity level. So you should have some questions written down that you can ask that are going to help you. And don't be afraid of asking those, because you're trying to make a decision and they're putting the pressure like, hey, we need to know right now, or we need to know within the hour if you can do this. So you're making a really quick decision here on something that's going to radically potentially impact your household and everyone that's in your household. It's a huge decision. You have a short amount of time, and you're going to be very limited in information. So you've got to try to make sure you ask as many questions as that you can to help drive through that information. The size of the sibling group, the age of the sibling group. Are they coming from foster care? Are they a new removal? Where are they going to go to school at? Are they going to have to stay in daycare if they're already in daycare? I know from state to state, there's rules in Florida about that. Lots of different things that you need to kind of think through ahead of time so that you can ask those questions, and it's going to help you in that decision-making process, and make you understand, is this a yes or is this a no? And why is that? What's the criteria? And I always encourage new foster families, stick to what you've laid out your first year. Write those things down. Don't change it. Because if you say 1, they call you with 5. I have a family right now. They did really good saying no. They said yes to 1, and then they found out there's 2 other siblings they want to move in with them, which puts them to 3, and they just wanted 1 for their first year. So it's, and they called and they're like, what should we do? It's challenging. It pulls at your heart. You want to do the right thing for everybody. Then you're going to have to make a decision. What are things we're willing to bend on, and what are some things that we're not going to bend on? This is just the way it's going to be, especially your first year when you're just learning about this complex system. You're learning about so many different things. And then the interaction, what does it look like? Am I co-parenting? Am I working with that parent on a regular basis? How many times a week am I going to be doing visits? Some of these things there may not be answers to, but if they've already been in care, then there's going to be answers to a lot of the questions that you have.
So having that list, starting with what you said, like you said, when we fill out paperwork, we check all those boxes. So making sure that you take the responsibility on yourself, because it's not necessarily already been filtered through. And I like the idea you said, people call you and say, what do we do? I think having experienced foster and adoptive parents that you can call and just say, help me think about this and remind me of why we had those boundaries, because here's what's going on. And that no really is about discerning your capacity and having wisdom. And even when even for those who need, because their hearts are just, feeling so compelled, we wanted to do this, we've been waiting for that call, but we had that experience. We waited and waited and waited after being, believing that, well, there were all these children. And the very first call we got blew through all boundaries, and we ended up saying no. And I look at it now that no actually led to the yes of the 2 who are our daughters to this day. Of course, I didn't know, and it was very confusing to say no when we felt like we waited and waited and waited. There were a few things, including visits that were well outside of our region. That ultimately was the thing, and that was hard. To say no, but to have some folks to remind you. But I love it that you said write it down. So we're going to get even more into these guidelines for determining if we can open our homes. And first, you said start with the end in mind. So talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah. So what are we trying to create here? What do we envision? And we're idealistic. So let's just start with the first thing, that whatever our idealisms are is probably not what it's going to be. It's very rare that I ever hear somebody, then they're like, this is exactly what we thought it was going to be. But, can we provide for this child a safe home, a loving home, a stable environment, without, harming what's there, or harming them, their emotional, their mental, their physical well-being. So I'll just say it like this, that when you have a large family, and you bring somebody into a large family, that might not be the best scenario. If that child needs, let's just say that child is going to need a lot of extra attention. They may need special therapies. There may be a lot of things that they have need of. Either one thing, they're not going to get it at the level that they need it, or they are going to get it, and everyone else is going to suffer as a result of that. So, that's why I really want to just mention, it's really not about size, it's about the health of your family. and understanding that that's the end that's in mind is we want to create an environment for the child who comes here to receive the healing that they need because they've just come out of a trauma situation. Just by being removed from their parents, they've been traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be able to create an environment here that's a healthy environment for that child during this season where their family is working a case plan, their case plan, the kid's case plan actually, and an environment to where the best case scenario for reunification can take place and the child leaves here better than when they came here. Everybody wants that. I think that's, so we have to assess that.
That's good. That is the ultimate end, right? So part of it is you mentioned earlier, assessing the current health of your family, your margins. And so what do you mean? Like, what are some of those questions you could ask yourself in terms of honestly looking at the health of your current family? And one thing I want to say before you go, before you answer this, is that sometimes we have to again ask ourselves is who is this for? Sometimes if things aren't going well, maybe, let me know what you think about this. Something, it's not quite right. And we might somewhere, if we're truly, truly honest, think, well, another child might help fix this, or at least make us feel good in the moment. But what about the current health of your family that we need to really look at?
Yeah. So I think just a question to ask, is what's the environment of our household right now? Is it peaceful? Is it already under strain? If it's already under strain and we're already being stretched, and this is just not going to be a good place for any additional child to come to, because we're just trying to manage what it is that we're doing right now in this position. And, do we have capacity? You said it earlier, there's a margin sometimes that is there, but when you move into that margin, you're eventually going to bleed outside that page. When you bleed outside the page, you're in trouble. So just assessing, like, where are we right now? What does it look like right now in our household? What does that margin look like? And is this a peaceful place for us? Another question we can look at, is, are the children that are in our home right now, are they thriving at this place? Are they adjusting well? Are they still in a healing place? We're trying to just assess, like, that child specifically, not just the environment of the household, but specifically the children in our house. Where are they? What place are they at in their own life? And then, are there children that are in a household, like I said, that are in crisis mode right now? They're getting intensive therapy. And, what does that look like? Because, listen, when you bring additional children into your house, now we're starting to look at situations too, like, are we going to have one child in the house injure another child in the house? Could be, and that's a real important question, because we just don't know the full history of anybody that we bring into our household. And so we're not going to get that history. The only thing we know right now is what's happening in our household at this moment. We don't know anything outside of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And can we even, do we have the capacity to keep everybody safe? And even in terms of, are we being honest and realistic about eyes on? Like, if it's not realistic that we can keep eyes on everybody, and then we bring in some unknown history, then we set people up for not being safe.
Yeah, because then we find ourselves in a place where we're having to create really strict safety plans within our home. Now we're protecting people in the household, and it doesn't feel like a home anymore. Once you start creating strict safety plans, because you want to guard the children that are in your home. So I want to protect the children, whether they're my bio children or my foster children. I want to protect them. But the minute we have to start creating safety plans in our home, where we have to have chimes on doorways, or we have to have certain things that are you're not allowed to be in this room with this other child. We start creating that. Now it's a very awkward place to be in a very awkward home, and it can feel more like a prison than a home. Once you start moving into those types of environments, now you're completely altering the environment that was there prior.
That is really good. And we need to talk about these things, because we can get a little caught up in, we'll figure it out mentality. And
I know we can, because we've done it.
That's really good. So we talked about support system, and I appreciated the, inspirational, relational, and tangible. So a couple more things. What other sorts of support systems should we be considering so we don't have this kind of Lone Ranger? I don't even know if people remember who the Lone Ranger is at this point, but this idea that I can do this. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So we got this. We said yes. So, but let's, be real. What do we do need help. So what does that look like?
Well, even the Lone Ranger had Tonto. Come on, somebody.
Again, half the people have no idea, but proceed.
That's right. No, it's okay. We dated ourselves tremendously. So listen, a support system is not just a network, and sometimes you can't depend on your own family or your family because things may become so awkward in your own house. Maybe they don't come around as much anymore. So, so I think it's really important that besides looking for people that are willing, I like what you mentioned earlier. My wife and I, we have friends that do not do foster care. And actually we've made a decision that when we go on double dates with them that we don't talk about our kids or foster care. Like we want to talk about it, because what happens when you're a foster parent, your whole life, every moment, from the moment you wake up, you go to sleep at night, you're dreaming about like what's going to happen in court this week, what's going to happen with their parents, and then you get around other foster families and then you're talking about case plans, you're talking about behavioral issues, you're talking about, so your whole life. So part of, your stability can be having friends and also making a decision that when we're with these people, we're not going to talk about this all the time, or we're not going to unload. We're going to have normal conversations about normal things. We'll maybe even do day trips with them. So my wife and I, we'll do day trips with this couple. We've got something coming up pretty soon. And Angie and I have made a decision. We didn't tell them this. We just made a decision amongst ourselves that it's to our health for us to turn that off for a little while. And let's just focus on having a relationship with somebody that doesn't involve foster or adoption or children even. And so, or at least children that are dealing with, hard situations in their life. So part of this is creating some other relationships even. And I know this is odd because most people don't talk about this, but for us, this has been helpful for us. Create some relationships that create some normalcy in your own life too, as a parent. Also, other support systems can look like finding a good therapist that you like. My wife has a therapist she loves, and so sometimes I'm encouraging her, hey, I think you should make an appointment with her. Or couples therapy, that you have somebody that you can talk with that maybe is a good coach or a good therapist that is going to listen and understand, maybe even offer some counsel to you and help you in some of the decisions. We were going through a time where we were looking at adopting another child, and we went to a counselor to kind of run this by, because Angie and I weren't always on the same page with every decision that was being made. And so bringing somebody else into the picture to help us walk through this, was important. I wish I could tell you that it was a great outcome. Angie and I both, she's like, I don't think this is a very good counselor. So you find another counselor. Yeah. But looking for supportive ways, there's so many online resources now, just like your resource that you have, but listening to other people's, reading blogs, listening to their YouTube channels, finding, those are also ways to help support and to give you some guidance. I have people who attend my classes, and when I talk about support, it's heartbreaking, but I had a lady that say, you know what? My support is attending your online class every month, the live training, because they feel isolated, and being with other people who are in this space for them as a support, to know that, I'm not alone. And yes, other people have the same crazy stories that I do. And they're dealing with some of the crazy stuff. That in itself can be mental support for you as a parent, to know that you're not by yourself. It's not an isolated story. It's going to be a relief to know. And sometimes hearing other people's stories makes me feel better about my own. Like, oh, you got a lot worse than I do. I think I'm okay. And so sometimes I'm like, thank you for sharing that. I feel a lot better now, because my story is not as bad as your story. You're right. You're in trouble, buddy.
That's good. That's good for you, not so much for them. I appreciate what you just said. First of all, going back to the beginning about having friends who you can just be, Ted and Angie, or for us, Mark and Kristen, and we don't talk about that. We're not foster parents, or we're not foster adoptive parents.
The label comes off. Good.
The label comes off. And I think that one of the things that is, and that can be hard, especially if you're setting boundaries and you're like, it's in your mind, but I'm not going to talk about that. One of the things I think that practically combats is, whether we want to or not, it can become our identity. It can become our family identity, and our personal. I'm a this, and like you said, is a label, yes, and it becomes so much a part, and that's destructive. And I used to think like, I get tired of saying the labels. And of course, in our world, doing our ministry, one of the reasons we say families like ours is because we want people to know that, like, we get it, we understand, like, we're not just up here saying, we're professionals who can tell you. It's like, no, we've lived it, we get it, we are a mess, and so we do it for that reason. But sometimes I get tired of it because I just want to say I'm a family. And when I get to be around people maybe who don't even know, or people who know us so well that we can talk about history way beyond that, or things, it is healthy. And what a great, like, encouragement, like, cultivate that in your life, those who are listening, like, be in those situations, because it is helpful to push against this becoming so much a part of our identity, that there's no, where one ends and the other begins. So I love that a lot. The other thing about having you made me think of something I haven't thought about in a very long time. And it was another call. We were going through, like, the hardest time with two of our kids, in just wild. And we did get a call about a baby, and I knew good and well this would not be a good idea for all the reasons you've listed. But I have to admit, the idea of a loving little baby, it was very attractive. Now, this is one that'll, this little baby will let me, and I knew that wasn't right or a good perspective. And I also knew I needed to talk to my counselor, and I knew what she was going to say. But it's like, I didn't want to ask her, because I knew she was going to be like, that's crazy talk. and I made myself. So it's one thing I can say. I had all of the wrong things going through, but I knew that I needed to ask her. I didn't want to hear it from Mark, quite frankly. But I did trust my counselor, and I did need to hear it. And she told me exactly what I knew she was going to say. So I just affirmed those things that you're saying. We need those people. So we have multiple new, more guidelines that we're going to post on our blog that Ted has articulated in terms of assessing family capacity and understanding needs of our kids and logistics and all of those things, and just using the importance of having godly wisdom. And one of the things you said, that it's not unchristian to say no. And that's, as we kind of wrap up with this conversation, every situation is unique. We absolutely leave space for the Holy Spirit to guide us in all things. This can't be the one category, though, in our life where we just completely check out of wisdom. It can't be the one place that we're so compelled that we are not listening to godly counsel, listening and setting safe boundaries and all of those things. And yet it's so tempting, because it's the kids. So thank you very, very much, Ted, for taking time to have this conversation. I appreciate you so much. You're practical, and also, just the fact that you've lived it, both the things that you would say, yeah, do that, and oh yeah, don't do that, because we learned the hard way. And I appreciate that so much. Do you have anything just to say to encourage those who are listening as we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say that depending on where you are in your journey, like your first year, second, third year, take what it is you're learning to and understand that we're going to make wrong decisions. It's not going to be, I was a control person. Foster care's changed my life. It's wrecked me. And so I don't control anything anymore. But I would say that making sure that as you walk through this, if you make bad decisions, it's okay. We all make decisions, and we've done, but those stories, those things that have happened can benefit other people as well. And they make us better. Like I'm a better person because of some of the bad decisions I've made. I hate to say that.
Yeah.
But because I've learned from those decisions, like I've changed. So understand that we're growing. I'm a different person today because of foster care and fostering and taking care of raising other people's children. I'm a better person today because of that. So we always say that foster care will bring out the best in you and it'll bring out the worst in you.
Yes.
And so through this journey, understand that you may be feeling some of the worst coming out in you right now. Just take a deep breath. It's okay, because God's got something amazing He's doing through you. Don't let it destroy you. Let it make you make you a better person. And you may be in a place where you feel like it's bringing out the best in you. Then celebrate that as well. But know that you're on this journey, and this journey isn't just about the children and the families that you're interacting with, but it's about what God is doing in your own life as well, because He is taking you and He's squeezing you, and He's changing you, and He's carving you. He's doing amazing things to you. You're going to be, your life is going to be more Christ-like at the end of the day, because you're allowing God to do a work in and through you that would have never happened if these children hadn't come into your home. And it may feel painful, but I'm telling you, there's something beautiful is happening in you, whether or not you can see it or not. And something beautiful is happening also in these children's lives, whether you can see it right now or not. And something beautiful in Jesus' name is happening to their parents' lives as well, whether you can see that or not, just because you've said yes and you're allowing God to do this work in and through you and your family as well.
Wow. Amen. To God be the glory for all of the things, all of our, as you've said, our shortcomings and our mistakes and all of the things. We learn a lot about God's grace. And I want to have you come back, Ted, because you have so much to teach us. One of the things that you and I talked very briefly about is this perspective on biological parents that honors God. And I definitely want to have you come back and talk a little bit more about that. That is all for this week, and we really look forward to being with you next month. We have some great guests lined up. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified when we publish a new video. We will be live each month for the Family Journey Show, as well as sharing additional resources in between that you won't want to miss out on. We will definitely share more about Ted and his ministry with you. Thank you so much for giving your time to listen in today.
Thank you for the invitation. It's been great.
Good.
Becoming a foster, adoptive, or kinship caregiver is exciting and scary all at the same time. There is no way of fully knowing what personality the child or children will have, or what trauma they have experienced. Finding the resources to help you navigate the day-to-day challenges can be tricky. This is where Resilient Roots comes in. This annual membership is the toolbox you need to support whole family strengthening. You'll have access to on-demand videos from our trauma-informed, research-based curriculum that teaches each member of your family how to speak up, listen, and cooperate. By building these foundational blocks of family communication, each family member will feel valued, heard, and truly understand their big emotions. Learn more by visiting finallyhome.net/resilient-roots. Use code FamilyJourneyShow for 50% off your first year.